Look alive, Tobago. The House will reignite with another debate, and this time it's all about the Assembly Chamber. As the foundation of Tobago's democratic governance for over 200 years, the Assembly Chamber embodies the island's rich political and cultural heritage. Therefore, the Assembly will formally request that the National Trust designate the Assembly Legislature building of Tobago as a National Heritage Site in recognition of its historical, architectural, and cultural significance. Assemblyman Niall George will lay the motion for the 39th sitting of the 2021 to 2025 session of the Tobago House of Assembly. This Thursday, March 27, from 1:30 p.m., our doors are open and all channels are clear. You can either come in or tune in. Either way, don't miss it.
Let us now pray. O Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of all our citizens in this our land, so that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Members, you may be seated.
Oath of allegiance of a new member. Announcements by the presiding officer.
Honorable members, I have received leave of absence from today's sittings from Assemblyman Sonny Craig, member for Buku Mount Pleasant, Assemblyman Trevor James, member for Scarborough Mount Grace, Assemblyman Natisha Charles Pantin, member for Bagatelle, Bacolet, and Councillor Orlando Cole. The leaves are granted.
Assembly bills sent back from Cabinet. Assembly laws brought back from Parliament. Petitions, papers, presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission.
Clerk, one moment. On the papers, Secretary of Finance, Trade and Economy, Councillor Petalan Roberts.
No.
Monthly budget report as at the end of January 2025.
Presentation of reports from Dispute Resolution Commission, select committees, Chief Secretary's question, Questions to secretaries. Questions for oral answer.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I request to have questions 264, 268, and 270 deferred to the next sitting to allow the member to gather all relevant information in response to the questions, as well as those questions posed to members who are absent. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Deferral granted. Minority Councillor. Question 265.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 265 to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Assemblyman Faith Brebner.
Assemblyman Faith Brebner.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. As it relates to the ambulances, 3 ambulances would be delivered to the Tobago Regional Health Authority on Friday, 28th of March, 2025. A 4th ambulance will be delivered within 2 weeks thereafter. The 4 ambulances are operational and will be placed on service on completion of end-of-user training. Total final estimated cost after all modifications is $1.448 $100. So $1,448,100 per ambulance. Total cost paid for the leased ambulances thus far. Total cost over from 2022 till now, $6,967,800. And that is broken down as follows. 2022 to 2023, they were here for Commonwealth Games, $209,250. Financial year 2023-2024, Tobago October Carnival, $87,750. And the daily service that started subsequently, $4,050,000. And thus far for fiscal 2024-2025 for the daily service, $2,620,800, totaling $6,967,800.
Minority Councillor. Follow up.
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, the Secretary spoke about they will become operational after user training. So one, an estimated time when the user training will be completed and why aren't they currently in operation?
Assemblyman Brebner.
I honestly, user training is just a short period so that we ensure that the drivers are fully aware of the paths and so forth. So that is not going to take a very long time. They aren't in operation because they actually should be on their way to the island today so that we can hand them over tomorrow. So I don't have an exact time as to when user training will end.
Minority Councillor, follow up.
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer. The information of the minority is that the vehicles came, the ambulances came to Tobago and went back to Trinidad. Can the Secretary indicate why they had to return to Trinidad?
Assemblyman Brebner.
Certainly. So the ambulances came, and when they came, we recognized that there were several things that needed to be modified with the ambulances. So they were taken back to the supplier, I guess that's the correct term, to have whatever changes made. And they've now gone through the process of getting the licensing and so forth.
Minority Councillor, final follow-up.
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer. Can the Secretary indicate if the modifications created additional costs for procuring the ambulances?
Assemblyman Brebner.
Yes, there are additional costs, but I don't have the exact cost for the modification at this point since that was not part of the question. But as I said before, the total cost now is $1,448,100 per ambulance. Is the total cost per ambulance now. Okay?
Question 2 66. Minority Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 266 to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Assemblyman Faith Brebner.
Assemblyman Brebner.
Thank you again, Madam Presiding Officer. So the question relates to the TRHA board that expired in and around January 6th, 2025. Has a new board been appointed? No, Madam Presiding Officer, a new board has not been appointed just yet. And just so that I could probably answer all of the follow-up questions pertaining to the new board, Executive Council Minute 605 of December 4th, 2024 approved the new board. Of course, TRHA boards are not appointed by the Tobago House of Assembly. TRHA boards are cabinet-appointed boards. The information was sent electronically to the cabinet, and that information was asked to be sent in hard copy. That information was sent hard copy to the Office of the Prime Minister and was delivered and accepted via the Office of the Prime Minister on the 8th of January 2025. I understand that a cabinet minute was drafted and that it may have, this is unofficial though, that it may have actually gone to cabinet maybe within the last week or so, which is in where we March. So no, because we wait for the TRHA, we wait for the cabinet to approve the board. The TRHA board is not in operation right now, and maybe we could ask our colleagues in Trinidad, when will the cabinet actually approve that? Pertaining to the other question, what is the current management process? In the interim, Madam Presiding Officer, the Executive Council approved the establishment of a Tobago Health Advisory Committee, and that advisory committee reports to me as a secretary, and that is how we are able to work closely with the Tobago Regional Health Authority in the interim until we have the board appointed by the President following cabinet decision.
Minority Councillor, any follow-up?
Yes, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, the Secretary indicated that no board is in place. However, sometime recently, we would have seen a memorandum of understanding being signed between the TRHA through, I guess, the outgoing chairman and another entity. So I'm wondering what authority the outgoing chairman had to sign the MOU and whether or not the MOU is binding.
Assemblyman Brebner.
Certainly. So yes, if you saw, well, maybe, so, no, I understand. It is the memorandum of understanding between the Children's Authority, the Tobago Regional Health Authority, and the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. I'm not sure if she said that explicitly, but that is the MOU that she's talking about. And I'm actually, your question proves that that document was not leaked, because if it was leaked, you would have seen, Madam Presiding Officer, that the former chair signed as chair from the period 2023 to 2025. And we were very clear on the authority that the individual was signing as, given that the agreements that we were making happened in that period. So it didn't leak, yeah. That's good.
Minority Councillor, any follow-up? Question 271. Minority Leader, Assemblyman Kelvin Morris.
It's 269. Question 271 to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Councillor TRHA Boris.
Councillor Boris.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. So the question poses with respect to overseas travel, can the Secretary give a breakdown of the position of the persons traveling, spend, and description details of each trip undertaken by the division from October 1st, 2024 to present? So the following is a breakdown of the overseas travel from October 1st, 2024 to present. World Travel Market 2024 in London, England, United Kingdom from November 5th to 7th, 2024. This was a 10-member contingent comprising of the Secretary of the Division, Protocol and International Relations Officer at the Division, Drum Officer at the Division, Promotions Officer at the Division, 4 cultural performers who are not members of staff of the Division, they are external persons, President of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, and Vice President of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. The total cost of this 10-member team to attend World Travel Market was $515,488.09. Madam Presiding Officer, the main objective of the overseas mission to World Travel Market was to engage with international stakeholders to have a sense of reinvigoration and confidence, which would therefore lead to increasing the promotion of the destination for them to recommend it to their respective clients and audiences. Further, in our efforts to maintain Destination Tobago's presence in the global marketplace and to continue our ongoing marketing thrust for the island, the following key objectives for participating at the annual World Travel Market were realized during this overseas mission. Firstly, Tobago jointly exhibited at WTM with Visit Trinidad from November 5th to 7th, which included cultural performances and an authentic taste of Tobago's culinary offerings through the inclusion of Tunsi chocolate products, as well as other items, sweets, wines, and dasheen-based products in particular. Additionally, it is to be noted that several engagements were had as part of the overall activation at WTM 2024, which included meetings between private sector tourism stakeholders, hoteliers, and tour operators, and UK-based tour operators and companies, attendance at the Caribbean Tourism Organization's Ministerial Roundtable meeting at the World Travel Market, meetings with media representatives and also noteworthy entities such as National Geographic Traveller UK, Wanderlust UK, Breaking Travel News, etc., attendance at the Wanderlust Awards, where Tobago placed in the top 5 for the Wanderlust Readers' Travel Awards for the 3rd year running. Tobago secured the title of 4th most desirable destination in the rest of the world category. We were also presented jointly with Trinidad with the Lonely Planet Award for the 7th place destination for Best in Travel 2025. And one of the most important successes coming out of WTM 2024 was our renegotiation with British Airways to solidify our position as a destination within their network. We were able to strategically approach continued airlift arrangements for Tobago with lower costs to the people of Tobago, which was agreed upon in November 2024. Under the new agreement for this year, the following items were actioned. 1, a reduction in commercial and marketing support of approximately 30%, saving the TTAL millions of dollars on this contract for the first time in our history. British Airways allowing bookings through to Tobago from Port of Spain via the airline's website, another first. Marketing support being structured across longer intervals to allow us a longer time to be able to pay on the contract. So now we have 3 intervals where payments are needed, January, April, and June, another first. And an option for the reduction clause, a further reduction, should the service be reduced to 1 flight for winter 2025 and 2026 is now included in this agreement, and this contract takes us from winter last year through to summer this year and through to winter at the end of this year. Another key takeaway in terms of activities was a visit to the Tobago stand by representatives of the Nottingham Forest Football Club of the English Premier League, who have expressed interest in partnering with Destination Tobago in the areas of sports tourism, and those conversations are still ongoing. The Caribbean Hotel Investment Conference and Operations Summit, Chicos in Barbados, November 13th to 15th. 1 person attending, the Secretary. One person attending, Secretary of the Division. The spend on this mission was $64,244.97. And the Coterie Retreat in the U.S. Virgin Islands and CTO end-of-year meetings in Miami, United States, December 6th to 12th. So these were 2 activations. 1 ran from December 6th to 8th and 1 from the 9th to the 12th. And the Secretary also attended. This cost $34,922.65. Madam Presiding Officer, the Caribbean Hotel Investment Conference and Operations Summit Barbados is an important forum where there was key participation by attendees and presenters from regional governmental representatives, opinion leaders, hotel developers, development banks, tourism officials, international investment fund representatives, and hotel brand executives. As Destination Tobago seeks to develop its tourism and hospitality industries respectively, and to attract investment with a view of becoming a major competitor within the tourism industry in the Caribbean region, and by extension globally, which is why making representation at such an important forum is very important. The theme for the 2024 Caribbean Hotel Investment Conference and Operations Summit was entitled Riding the Wave, which showcased panel discussions and presentations focused on the latest data and hotel performance trends across the Caribbean. This insightful event allowed for discussions on how the Caribbean as a region, and by extension Tobago, is building upon the continuous growth and development in the tourism industry post-pandemic. This forum also served to promote Tobago's investment opportunities, particularly in ecotourism, boutique hotels, and the development of infrastructure that aligns with the island's Sustainable Tourism Trust, as mandated by this administration and the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. Madam Presiding Officer, on the matter of the Coterie Retreat in the U.S. Virgin Islands, this forum sought to bring representation for Tobago among 200 industry practitioners in the multicultural wedding and events industry, where romance is one of our key niches that we hope to promote, and was hosted by Munaluchi, which is a multicultural global technology company serving the global wedding and events industry. Tobago was well represented in my capacity as Secretary for Tourism, where I presented as a speaker on a panel to discuss Tobago as a premier wedding destination island as part of this retreat. It is also to be noted that Ms. Asha Mars, as a standard bearer in the Tobago space as it relates to destination weddings, also attended the Coterie Retreat and was able to network, exchange ideas, and make much-needed contacts for bringing our island even further into the limelight as it relates to the romance and wedding sector of the tourism industry. The 7th China International Import Expo in Shanghai, China, November 5th to 10th. This was attended by the technical advisor in the division. The spend for her participation was $69,369.68. And the ASM Air Service Development Training in Florida, United States from December 3rd to 6th, also attended by the technical advisor of the division, $25,836.90. Madam Presiding Officer, as it relates to the 7th China International Import Expo, technical advisor attended as part of a special national delegation led by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. CIIE is the world's first national-level expo dedicated solely to imports, and during its 7-year history, it has attracted thousands of exhibitors and global professional purchasers. China, in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between both countries, gifted the nation a pavilion in the country display section of the expo, and on the invitation of the Ministry of Trade to the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy, and the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation, the technical advisor was selected from the division to attend to engage in both promotional work of the destination and to explore tourism business opportunities in the National Pavilion. Specific meetings with major tour operators were also arranged by TNT's ambassador to China, Her Excellency Annalisa Lau. Coming out of this expo, the destination, through the tourism agency and with the support of local stakeholders, welcomed a travel agent from China to do a familiarization tour and publish content about Destination Tobago. As it relates to the ASM Air Service Development Training, this occurs annually as an in-depth and intensive face-to-face series in Florida. This unique training is hosted by ASM, the world's leading experts in growing air service relationships and air service development training. ASM is also the founder of the world's foremost airlift development and negotiation event, Roots. Participation was highly recommended by our colleagues from the Airports Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, who have benefited from this training, and the purpose of the training was centered on enhancing knowledge and competence in route development and airlift negotiations, obtaining critical knowledge on the design of tailored incentive programs and marketing partnerships, and ultimately strengthening the division's position regarding airlift strategy development. Roots Americas 2025 and the Caribbean Tourism Organization's business meetings in Nassau, Bahamas from February 9 to 15th, Secretary Dotcat and Technical Advisor Dotcat attended. Total spend on this mission was $93,664.10. Madam Presiding Officer, Tobago was represented and joined a national delegation on the country stand, hosted by the Airports Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Routes Americas is the only air service development forum uniting the Americas, bringing together senior decision makers from the region's leading airlines, airports, and destinations. This year's staging in the Bahamas was also historic, as it was the first time Routes Americas were held in the Caribbean since the event's inception in the 1990s. At Routes Americas, a collaborative country approach was taken, with the team engaging in more than 20 meetings. Subsequently, there has already been direct follow-up to maintain connections, and a scheduled visit from one carrier is expected during the second quarter of this year. Further, we continue to maintain close and open communications with the Airports Authority on devising airlift strategy. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm pleased to announce, as per media releases that were already present in the public space, Trinidad and Tobago has made history by being accepted as a member of the Caribbean Tourism Organization's Cruise Committee, which plays a crucial role in shaping regional cruise strategies and policies, fostering collaboration among member states to drive sustainable sector growth. Through this platform, Tobago will work alongside other Caribbean destinations to lead the strengthening of relationships with cruise lines, ensuring that the region remains a premier and competitive choice for cruise tourism. And finally, Madam Presiding Officer, ITB and GAS Market Sales Mission in Germany from February 25th to March 5th, 2025. The delegation from the division was comprised of the Secretary and the International Relations and Protocol Officer from the division, and the spend on this mission was $124,519.10. Madam Presiding Officer, as it relates to the ITB sales mission in Germany for 2025, a more cost-efficient approach was taken this year, and therefore the decision was made to opt out of attending the trade show as an exhibitor. This allowed for a very structured and pointed sales mission. This strategic approach allowed for detailed discussions with the main players in the German travel industry to restore confidence and assurance that the destination is still a safe attraction, given recent developments nationally, which have prompted negative advisories that directly affects Tobago as a destination. We are pleased to announce that Nobelcom Communication, our new German market representative, was appointed this year, and fruitful discussions and exchanges were had outlining the expectations of Destination Tobago. And we have the commitment and dedication required going forward as it relates to our operations in the German market. Some of the other key stakeholders that were met include TRHA, Explorer Finreisen, Atambo Tours, who all indicated their willingness to continue promoting actively Destination Tobago as a choice for the German market. Madam Presiding Officer, at this sales mission, an honest and extensive conversation was held with air service provider Condor, as well as our shared partner with the Barbados Tourism Marketing Incorporated, and a greater understanding was realized as to the requirements of the German market as it relates to selling Destination Tobago. We are also now in a position to leverage our relationship in a manner that gives Tobago a competitive edge, and for us to strategize effectively to meet our objectives in that regard. I thank you.
Assemblyman Kelvin Morris.
So, given that the Secretary has now embarked on a number of trade missions, travel missions overseas, notably 3 WTMs, 3 ITBs, can the Secretary indicate to the people of Tobago how many new flights have been added as a result of her trips?
Councillor Boris.
I'm glad you asked that question, Mr. Minority Leader. Unfortunately, because the Tobago House of Assembly does not enjoy the autonomy that we should, this Assembly cannot sign on the dotted line for new airlift if we don't have control of civil aviation, which is under the remit of Ministry of Works and Transport Trinidad. And we also do not have the funding to encourage new airlift, because most of these airlines require something to be put on the table, whether it be commercial support or marketing support. The $42 million that we get every year to run the TTAL is woefully inadequate for us to engage in new contracts, because the current contracts already take up so much of the allocation. In any case, my information is that there are at least 2 carriers who are interested in flying into Destination Tobago, and what works for us is that they already have their licenses to fly into the destination, and these are the people we'll be actively going after to ensure that those flights can start before the end of this fiscal year. In addition, while we were at routes, we also met with 2 other airlines who are interested in providing additional international airlift to the destination, and the Airports Authority of Trinidad and Tobago is actually assisting us in getting those airlines to be able to commence flights.
Assemblyman Morris, follow up.
Given that under the PNM-led TRHA House of Assembly, that assembly was able to add over 8 new flights, and given under the leadership of this secretary, she's confirming she has added 0 flights, will the secretary consider her tenureship a failure?
Councillor Boris.
So under the previous PNM-led TRHA, there was a special line item for airlift called the rolling plan. And under that rolling plan, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars were allocated every financial year for us to pay for airlift. For example, under the previous Secretary of Tourism, Tracy Davidson Celestin, we would recall that there was a flight called the Gull flight that flew in from Brazil that was shared from Barbados. The destination spent millions of dollars for that flight, and it was an abject failure. Only 4, 5 single-digit persons used to come off into the destination, and the person who benefited greatly from that was the island of Barbados. That rolling plan no longer exists, so this TRHA is no longer receiving hundreds of millions of dollars to pay for airlift. We only get $42 million every year under the TTAL, who is charged with paying for airlift, and the marketing and recurrent expenses, and based on current expenses and current contracts with BA and Condor, there is simply no more money to pay for airlift. So no, I don't consider my tenure a failure.
Assemblyman Morris, final follow-up.
Madam Presiding Officer, I'm doing some maths because I was part of a TTAL that was able, with the same amount of money,
Question,
to attract
Assemblyman
new
Morris.
airlines, that being Sunwing. And Madam Presiding Officer, I note under this secretary, they also discontinued Virgin Atlantic, which would mean
I know there's a
more
question
money to
inside
bring new
here,
flights.
Assemblyman Morris. Question, please.
The question is, given that the PNM, with the same amount of allocation, was able to add new flights,
Members, please allow for the member to ask his question.
in 2018, the PNM was able to add new flights with the same allocation and with the same challenges.
Question.
Can the secretary therefore indicate what is the challenge in her getting new flights to the island?
Councillor
Because the
Boris.
same situation existed.
Thank you,
during that
Assemblyman
time.
Morris. Councillor Boris.
Madam Presiding Officer, planes do not just fall out of the sky and land on airports. In order for any airline to fly into a destination, there first needs to be an air services agreement. And secondly, that airline is supposed to have a license to fly into the destination. At this time, the Tobago House of Assembly can only have conversations with entities that have already gotten their requisite licenses and permission to fly into Trinidad and Tobago. So, entities like Caribbean Airlines, which are supposed to be servicing both Trinidad and Tobago, where we are yet still to get back our number of domestic flights before COVID. We have been in negotiations with Caribbean Airlines to add some additional flights to their roster to increase direct airlift from Tobago. And after months of back and forth, months of negotiation, Caribbean Airlines sent back to tell the Tobago House of Assembly that they did not receive clearance from their uppers, AKA politics, AKA central government shut it down. So maybe you should go to your handlers in Trinidad and indicate to them that Caribbean Airlines operations are still paid for by the taxpayers of Tobago, so that even before we start to go to other airlines outside of Trinidad and Tobago, Caribbean Airlines has a mandate to serve both Trinidad and Tobago and to assist Tobago in growing its tourism market above all other destinations in the Caribbean. Madam Presiding Officer, further, because the Tobago House of Assembly does not receive applications for airlines to fly,
This lies within the remit of the civil aviation. We cannot force their hand when applications come in and they take inordinately long to be processed. We continue our conversations with carriers who can fly into the destination, as I indicated, 4 of them have expressed interest in flying into destination Tobago between the end of this fiscal year and by mid of next fiscal year. And those conversations continue. We will actively be pursuing those conversations, Madam Presiding Officer. Everything takes time. And to answer the minority leader's question about adding new flights, Sunwing is no longer in operation. They operated one time for one season. And while you sat, both of you, minority leader and minority councillor, sat on the TTAL as directors, where you were signing away contracts for millions of dollars to Virgin Atlantic to bring 5 and 10 and 15 people to the destination. This administration took a decision based on numbers to discontinue that arrangement and consolidate our support behind BA. And the result of that has been our last year, calendar year that is 2024, Tobago ended with a 76% load factor on BA, which is 6 percentage points behind Trinidad, who pays for no airlift. So Trinidad's load factor is 81%.
Members.
Tobago's load factor is 76%, meaning the flight is making money, it is making BA profit, and it was on the basis of that I was able to go into the room with BA and negotiate our contract downwards. We've saved millions because of that negotiation, something that either of you failed to do in your tenure.
Clerk.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly, and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business, motion.
Assemblyman Niall George, Assistant Secretary, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, and Deputy Presiding Officer. You may now join the seat.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to bring this motion that stands in my name. I would like to begin by first thanking the people of the electoral district of Plymouth-Backrock for giving me the opportunity to serve them and the people of Tobago by extension. I bring this motion as the Deputy Presiding Officer who can ably represent the concerns of the Assembly Legislature and also as Assistant Secretary in the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. Madam Presiding Officer, I would like to apply Standing Order 42.6 so that I may read my speech.
42-7.
42.7, sorry.
Leave granted.
Speak a little louder, Minority Councillor. I'm not hearing what you're saying. All right.
Leave is granted. Please continue.
The motion reads, whereas the Assembly Legislature of Tobago has been the foundation of democratic governance and legislative development for over 200 years, embodying the island's rich political and cultural heritage. And whereas the Assembly Legislature stands as a symbol of Tobago's democratic evolution, autonomy, and resilience, and has a historical significance in the shaping of the island's legal and administrative framework. And whereas the preservation and recognition of historical significant sites contribute to national identity, cultural education, and tourism development. And whereas the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago is mandated to identify and protect sites of historical and cultural importance for future generations, be it resolved that this Assembly formally calls on the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago to designate the Assembly Legislature of Tobago as a National Heritage Site in recognition of its historical, architectural, and cultural significance. Be it further resolved that the Tobago House of Assembly initiates the process of documenting, conserving, and promoting the Assembly Legislature as a protected heritage site under the Department of Antiquities of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. And be it further resolved that this Assembly commits to supporting preservation efforts, public awareness campaigns, and sustainable tourism initiatives centered on the Assembly Legislature's historical legacy. Madam Presiding Officer, members of this Honorable House, today I have the honor to table this motion with urgency and purpose, because what we are discussing is not just about preserving a building, it is about preserving our identity. To those who may attempt to speak opposite to this motion, for whatever reason, allow me to outline why the approval of this motion is an intrinsic part of preserving Tobago's identity. Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago Assembly Legislature is more than a structure. It's a testament to our past, a struggle for the right of every Tobagonian, and a witness to our ongoing struggle for greater autonomy and the beating heart of our democracy. Most importantly, since its establishment, it has been where the voices and needs of Tobagonians are heard. Yet, notwithstanding its evident importance, we cannot help but wonder, why has it not been accorded with a National Heritage Site designation? Madam Presiding Officer, if the walls of this Honorable House could speak, they would tell us all of the historical moments that we, who are now privileged to stand here, have missed. It would recount the moments of the first meeting of the Tobago House of Assembly in 1768, when General Robert Melville established a bicameral legislature, one of the earliest in the Caribbean. They will remind us that prior to Scarborough becoming our capital, the Assembly initially sat in Georgetown, now Studley Park, before it was moved here in 1769. It is these very halls that saw political movements rise and fall. The persistent drive of self-rule, the voice of the generations that would not allow Tobago's autonomy to elude us. Why is it important? For stories are an important way of retaining history, and these walls are full of such stories that are relevant to Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, 120 years this Assembly governed Tobago by itself, until 1889, when we were annexed and united with Trinidad, and again in 1899, when we lost our separate status altogether. Madam Presiding Officer, before that, Tobago position was much higher than Trinidad. Tobago, which was once an island that governed itself, was degraded to the status of an administrative district. Still, despite colonial neglect and political reserves, Tobago never embraced silence. The fight for self-rule continued in these very walls, prompting the restoration of the Tobago House of Assembly in 1980, and its further entrenchment under Act 40 of 1996. Madam Presiding Officer, this Honorable House possesses great power. To give some historical context, Tobago was acquired by the British in early 19th century, after various European powers, including the Dutch and French, had controlled the island at different times. The British had established control over Tobago by the Treaty of Paris in 1814, which marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars and the consolidation of British territories gained in the Caribbean. In 1814, the British colonial government in Tobago established a form of local government, and the construction of the building in 1825 was a significant step in the development of Tobago's political and administrative infrastructure. The building became the seat of Tobago's judiciary, legislative council, and the body responsible for local governance. The latter, the Tobago House of Assembly, when the structure of government evolved. The Assembly's logo, designed in 2018, incorporated a mace, a symbol of legislative authority, alongside the Georgian architectural elements of the chamber. Just above your head, Madam Presiding Officer, and pinned on our suits is a constant reminder of the power and responsibility that this Assembly holds. The Tobago House of Assembly Legislative Building has historically played a central role in the governance of Tobago. It has served as the location for the debates, discussion, and decision-making processes of the island's political leaders for all these 200 years. In 1980, the Tobago House of Assembly Act was passed, allowing Tobago to have greater autonomy over its internal affairs, which was a significant development in the island's governance and, in essence, the beginning of the restoration of Tobago's autonomy, which it lost when it was forced into a relationship with Trinidad. The building has undergone restorations to maintain its structural integrity and preserve its historical value. Efforts have been made to retain the building's Georgian architectural features, including the external facade, large windows, and symmetrical design. Prior to the removal of the magnificent Georgian portico and the entrance, and the unsympathetic manner in which the building has been modified between the late 1990s and early 2000s, this building was considered to be the best example of Georgian architecture in the Caribbean. More than this building, underneath us, once had a tunnel system connecting this building with the port in Lower Scarborough and possibly the fort in Upper Scarborough. These tunnels were ill-advisedly filled in with rubble and concrete. These are ancient vaults in this building that have never been opened in modern times, and for which no one alive or in the TRHA has the keys. We are currently in talks with the original company that manufactured these vaults in Europe to have them open. In this building, in the same area we once housed the entire public library for the island, the Registrar General's office, and other offices. These were also the areas that once held prisoners that were locked up simply because they looked like us. Today, the Tobago House of Assembly is not just an administrative building, but also a symbol of the island's eventful and sometimes unfortunate colonial history and political development. This administration, as a matter of policy, believes that there is a place for the preservation of artifacts. Hence, the inclusions of antiquities as a noticeable department within the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. In fact, 2 years ago, the Tobago House of Assembly opened up an architectural competition for designs for an expanded Tobago House of Assembly Legislature building. And in that scope, it was made clear that this 200-year-old building must be preserved and seamlessly blended into an expanded legislature building. There is no planned destruction of this building. The truth is, this building, as it is inadequate for today's needs. There is barely room for committee meetings. We had to remove the media gallery from the chamber to make room for more members. The member lounge is now converted into office space. The presiding officer operates in an office with carpets blackened by mold. Her toilet is almost in her kitchen. Her paint is chipping and falling everywhere, and the electrical wiring is dangerously ancient and puts the building at risk to be lost by fire. All of these and several other factors are why in our budgetary request, we did in fact make a request for funding for this building. We were allocated a measly $500,000. Our approach to treating with buildings and properties as ancient as this one is that expert guidance to restore and preserve so that we can avoid the habit of slapping on concrete where it does not belong. It is why we restored the lighthouse at Fort King George. It is why when we restored the lighthouse at Fort King George, we brought in expert help to guide the restoration. Some may ask, why the National Trust? The National Trust Act establishes the trust to be responsible for listing and acquiring such properties of interest as the trust considers appropriate, permanently preserving lands that are property of interest and as far as practicable, retaining the natural feature and conservation and conserving the animal and plant life, preserving, maintaining, repairing, and servicing or arranging for the preservation of property of interest other than land, and where such property of interest comprises buildings, augmenting the amenities of such buildings and their surroundings, making provisions for the access to and enjoyment of the property of interest by the public, encouraging research into property of interest, including, where applicable, any animal, plant, or marine life associated therein, compiling photographic or architectural records of property of interest, making the public aware of the value and the beauty of the heritage of Trinidad and Tobago, and advising the government on the conservation and preservation of property of interest and on any or all of the matters referred above. Also of importance is that according to Section 6B of the National Trust Act, the trust may raise money by borrowing for its preservation projects. And since the TRHA can't borrow money, and since we won't be given the money due for the necessary preservation works, this presents an opportunity for the TRHA to so engage through the National Trust. It should be noted that in accordance with Section 7D of the same Act, the National Trust may accept property in trust for a public purpose and act in a trust as, or as the agent of, the trustee of any property dedicated to the public purpose. And Section 7E, maintain and manage or assist in the maintenance and management and preservation of property of interest under an agreement with the owner thereof. The Tobago House of Assembly, being the owner of this building, once this motion is approved, will engage the National Trust on terms acceptable to the people of Tobago in accordance with Section 7D and E of the National Trust Act. It must be noted, in accordance with Section 4A, of the 3 appointed members mentioned in subsection 4, 1 member nominated by the Tobago House of Assembly shall represent the interest of Tobago. The current Tobago representative on the National Trust is Mr. George Leacock. So to be clear, this is not an act of giving away our property or our responsibility. The act is clear. It allows owners to determine the rules of engagement with the trust, and the trust, of which the TRHA is already a member of statute, is empowered to raise funds for the preservation and protection of buildings like this 200-year-old building. Maybe in the near future, we will be able to completely restore the portico and the roofline to its original beauty. Madam Presiding Officer, what more must a building endure before we acknowledge its significance? This place has witnessed everything from autonomy to annexation, marginalization to revival. Here is where we fought our political wars, where the substantive groundwork for self-determination of Tobago was established. And still, it is denied the formal recognition it is due. Madam Presiding Officer, other nations have taken vigorous action to entrench their institutions of parliament. Barbados Parliament Building, amongst the most ancient in the Commonwealth, has been designated as a National Heritage Site to safeguard its democracy. Puerto Rico's Capitol Building is the fulcrum upon which its destiny will be shaped. So why should Tobago be any exception? Why must we delay another day to restore the historical injustice? While other nations rush to protect their historical architecture, we hesitate. What are we waiting for? A royal decree? A letter from King George III himself? A sign from heaven? No, time is not waiting for us. action time is here. Aside from cultural and historical importance, making this site a National Heritage Site is an investment in Tobago's economic future. Beyond this cultural and historical significance, recognizing this as a heritage site is an investment in Tobago's economic future. According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, cultural and heritage tourism accounts for nearly 40% of global tourism revenue. Madam Presiding Officer, as we know, tours to the Assembly Legislature have already begun. These have not only been catered for individuals who are interested in learning about distinctive political history or to see close up the lovely 18th century Georgian architecture of the facility, but there have been tours to feature young Tobagonians in high school, primary school, and even younger. It is not just for tourists, but this historical building holds the stories that can educate Tobagonians themselves. Madam Presiding Officer, official status would enable us to build on such initiatives, creating guide tours, interactive presentations, social media promotions, and cultural programming that will make this location a world-class heritage site. This makes way for cultural entrepreneurs and artisans and greater global exposure to Tobago's rich heritage. Madam Presiding Officer, it is not only that the past is preserved, it is that our future is being built, and we open our doors to the world to experience Tobago beyond sand and blue waters. It gives the possibility of our distinctive heritage and history being narrated in a fresh perspective. Madam Presiding Officer, let us not overlook the legal safeguards that accompany this status. If we were to grant National Heritage Site status under the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago Act 11 of 1991, this building would be safeguarded against inappropriate changes or demolition. Its place in history, permanently secured and cemented. Additionally, this motion aligns perfectly with our division's vision. We are building an antiquities department to ensure that the historical landmarks receive the attention and protection they deserve. What better way to start this process than to have the Assembly Legislature take its rightful place as a National Heritage Site? This is an issue of precedence showing that Tobago is interested in its past and is prepared to conserve it for its future. Madam Presiding Officer, members of this Honorable Assembly, if we do not protect this site, who will? If we do not do it now, then when? We are all present in this chamber today by virtue of the institution that has given us the voice to speak, to lead, and to govern. The least we can do is ensure that it is recognized, preserved, and honored. This motion is not merely another agenda item for today. It is Tobago's hour of reckoning. Let today be the day we correct an ancient mistake. The day we make it unmistakable that Tobago's past is not to be discarded, and the day we pledge to safeguard our political and cultural heritage. Assemblymen and councillors will arrive, assemblymen and councillors will depart, but this notable house will stay, and it will contain Tobago's advancement. It narrates the past, the present, and will tell the future. I call upon each member of this honorable house to place Tobago first by approving this motion, not merely a vote for history, but a vote for Tobago's future. The moment is now. Thank you.
Minority Councillor Petal Daniel Benwa, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the opportunity to contribute to this debate. Madam Presiding Officer, the motion before us calls for the Assembly.
Member, one moment, please.
Yeah.
I got so distracted that I forgot I had my part to play. Honorable members, the question proposed is, Whereas the Assembly Legislature of Tobago has been the foundation of democratic governance and legislative development for over 200 years, embodying the island's rich political and cultural heritage. And whereas the Assembly Legislature stands as a symbol of Tobago's democratic evolution, autonomy, and resilience, and has a historical significance in shaping the island's legal and administrative framework. And whereas the preservation and recognition of historical significant sites contribute to national identity, cultural education, and tourism development. And whereas the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago is mandated to identify and protect sites of historical and cultural importance for future generations, be it resolved that this Assembly formally calls on the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago to designate the Assembly Legislature Building of Tobago as a National Heritage Site in recognition of its historical, architectural, and cultural significance. Be it further resolved that the Tobago House of Assembly initiates the process of documenting, conserving, and promoting the Assembly Legislature Building as a protected heritage site under the Department of Antiquities of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. And be it further resolved that this Assembly commits to supporting preservation efforts, public awareness campaigns, and sustainable tourism initiatives centered on the Assembly Legislature historical legacy. Now, Councillor Petal Daniel Benoit, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Again, Madam Presiding Officer, thank you for the opportunity to join the debate. And one of the resolutions to the motion is to formally call on the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago to designate the Assembly Legislature Building as a National Heritage Site. But Madam Presiding Officer, we on the minority is of the firm belief that we did not need a motion to have the Tobago Legislature Building designated as a national site, a National Heritage Site. Madam Presiding Officer, in listening to the piloting of the motion, we heard a lot coming from the member about funding to renovate or improve the building. So, Madam Presiding Officer, we are wondering what is the real intent of the motion. Because if you look at the website of the National Trust and you do a simple Google search, you would see that there's a process and a policy to establish a property as a National Heritage Site. And Madam Presiding Officer, on the website of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, there's a document, and it's called Policy and Procedure for Listing Properties of Interest. In the document, it also identifies key stakeholders of national heritage management of Trinidad and Tobago, and they are identified according to 3 levels. Level 1, global, level 2, national, and level 3, local. And on the national level, the Tobago House of Assembly is listed as one of the stakeholders of heritage management in Trinidad and Tobago, along with the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, Tongue and Country Planning, other ministries, EMA, and they name some of the ministries, Ministry of Community Development, because they have had sites, as well as the Ministry of National Security. And what the policy indicates that these stakeholders are not exhaustive. Madam Presiding Officer, the policy also goes on to identify a step-by-step approach to, firstly, listing the property, because included in the policy, it says that the property must be listed on the inventory of register, right? So, and there's a flow chart which gives from start to completion of the process that should go through for the legislature building to be deemed a national heritage site. And I want to take some time to highlight some elements of the process. So firstly, the process starts with the nomination of this legislature building as a inventory of a heritage asset. And anybody, Madam Presiding Officer, well, not anybody, but there are a list of persons who can nominate Assembly Legislature to be included on the inventory of heritage assets. And Madam Presiding Officer, the document speaks to it. So properties included in the inventory of heritage assets may be nominated by the National Trust, Council, its members or staff, the Landmark Subcommittee, as well as government agencies, NGOs, and it even speaks to the general public. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I guess any agency or person can decide that they will like to nominate a property to be included on the inventory of heritage assets. And Madam Presiding Officer, there is no reason why the Tobago House of Assembly cannot nominate this building, the Assembly Legislature, as part of the inventory on national heritage assets. And Madam Presiding Officer, it goes on to speak to, so when you submit and prepare the name to be included on the site, it speaks to the compilation of a dossier. And again, the policy would have identified all the requirements that are needed to be included in the dossier. And this dossier is to be submitted, of course, to the landmarks, the council for a decision. And after, if that decision is approved, then it goes to the minister with responsibility. And once the minister approves, then the person who made the request is given notice of the intention to list the property as a heritage site. And Madam Presiding Officer, very recently, we had a debate here for International Women's Day. It was in this month, and members of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago visited this very said building. We saw the photographs, we saw it on the legislature site, and the information that was provided, or we were informed on the minority that the building is already listed on the inventory of national heritage assets. So, Madam Presiding Officer, what is being suggested is that, one, we avail ourselves of the process to have the legislature building listed as a heritage site, and we are already started where it is listed as an inventory item. So we just need to continue on the process, look on the website of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, its policies and procedures, and continue on with the process. So if we are really interested, Madam Presiding Officer, in having the legislature listed as a national site, I don't see why a motion needs to come to the House to say that. What it really does, Madam Presiding Officer, is to expose the incompetence of this administration. So I am advising and recommending that the division and the members visit and get acquainted with the policy and continue to have the Tobago Legislature building, the Assembly Legislature building, designated as a site. And the member, I want to clear up some things that the member spoke to. The member indicated that the TRHA is not able to borrow, cannot borrow. Madam Presiding Officer, the TRHA can borrow with the approval of the Minister of Finance. So it is not accurate to indicate that the Tobago House of Assembly cannot borrow. So that was one of the reasons that we wanted to have the property listed. So because the National Trust can borrow, this was one of the requirements, or this was one of the suggestions why the property should be listed. But outside of that, Madam Presiding Officer, based on the process, I really don't see the role of the legislature in calling on the National Trust to designate the Legislature building as a heritage site. And we're asking the question, what is the real purpose of the motion? Is it an attempt for this administration to mask its failures? Because we are aware that they have failed in every aspect. Everything that they have attempted to do has failed. The economy is in decline. The tourism sector is limping along. The construction and quarrying sector is in decline. Agricultural sector is in decline. So is it that this motion is really one to mask the incompetence of the administration? And if the administration is really interested in having the site listed as a heritage site, then it should follow the policies and procedures outlined by the National Trust. Additionally, Madam Presiding Officer, the real work of governance is not just passing redundant resolutions, because we see this resolution as redundant, particularly that the Assembly Legislature, this House doesn't have a role in approving the legislature as a national site. So instead of wasting the time of this August House to call on the National Trust to do what it is already mandated to do, we ask that this administration focus on the economic growth of our island, focus on providing sustainable jobs to the people, particularly our youths, and to properly manage the finances and the affairs of the island of Tobago. So, Madam Presiding Officer, I want to encourage the members opposite to do their homework. Go on the website. You could do a simple Google search, pull up the policy and procedure, and follow it. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Councillor Tashia Boris, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And before I get into my presentation this afternoon, I would like to place on record an expression of my sincerest condolences to the family of Dr. Cyril Collier. And I ask your permission for this House, for this chamber, for members of this chamber and those observing, to observe 1 minute of silence in his memory as a mark of respect for his sterling contributions in history, culture, and education.
Members, we will now observe 1 minute of silence. Thank you, honorable members.
for your recognition to Dr. Collier. Councillor Boris, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, let me begin by saying that I wasted the last 15 minutes of my life listening to the contribution of the minority councillor. Because once again, she reminds us that just like anybody here, all of us could read, all of us could go on Google, and we could go on Mark Zuckerberg's internet and look at a policy. And she asks, what is the purpose of bringing the motion to the House? Well, you guys are the minority council. The idea of bringing the motion to the House is to get your agreement that this motion is worth putting on public record that this administration wants to do what is necessary to recognize this chamber that we stand in as members as a very important and integral part to our cultural and historical legacy on the island of Tobago. So if you're telling me that the Minority Council is not interested in being part of the conversation, then don't complain when you're left out. Because at the end of the day, when we come to this chamber, we're about the people's business. If we have to try to convince the two of you opposite that something makes sense, 4 years is not enough to do that job. But when we stand in this chamber, it's because when we make our presentations and the people of Tobago and the people of Trinidad and the people outside of Trinidad and Tobago are listening, they understand what our intent is, which is to include them in governance, which is to inform them of what is taking place, which is to get their buy-in to the things that we want to champion on their behalf. And that is why we stand in this House bringing this motion today. Madam Presiding Officer, I seek your leave under Standing Order 42.7 to read parts of my presentation. So I rise today to... Sorry? Thank you. So I rise today not to merely lend my voice to this debate and to support my colleague in the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Assemblyman Niall George, but to champion a cause that transcends politics and personal interests. We are celebrating the bicentennial, the commemoration of the bicentennial of the establishment of the Assembly Legislature. And this cause, this motion, why we're here today, strikes at the very heart of our identity, our legacy, and the future we envision for generations to come. Today we stand at a pivotal moment where we must decide whether we will safeguard the foundation of our history or allow it to fade into obscurity. This motion is not just about recognizing a building. It is about reclaiming our narrative, strengthening our cultural fabric, and ensuring that the sacrifices of those who came before us are not forgotten. This has been a long walk to freedom, and we on this side continue that long walk to freedom, where at the end of that journey is Tobago's self-determination and Tobago's autonomy. This Assembly Legislature building is not just brick and mortar. It is the embodiment of Tobago's democratic resilience, political evolution, and the unyielding spirit of our people. For over 2 centuries, this building has borne witness to the shaping of our island's governance. It has been a silent guardian of our autonomy, a tangible representation of our journey towards self-determination, and yet, despite its profound significance, because we all agree that the history that lies within these walls, no price tag can be put on that. We find ourselves in a position where it lacks the official recognition and protection that it rightfully deserves, and that is an oversight we must correct today. Madam Presiding Officer, history is the soul of the people. It defines who we are, where we have been, and most importantly, where we are headed. Recognizing the Assembly Legislature building as a protected heritage site is not simply just an act of preservation, but rather it's an act of empowerment. And this motion seeks to empower us to do what is necessary to preserve this building. It is a declaration that Tobago's history is valuable and our legacy is worth honoring, and that our identity as a people is rooted in more than just words, but in the very structures that have shaped our governance and culture. The Department of Antiquities, which was established under this administration, which is under the remit of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation, has been working assiduously to advance the preservation of Tobago's historical landmarks. However, without formal designation, and that formal designation has to come through the National Heritage Trust, we risk economic growth, attracting visitors who seek cultural and historical experiences. In Europe, for example, heritage tourism contributes billions to local economies annually. In the Caribbean, destinations such as Barbados, Cuba, and St. Kitts have successfully leveraged their historical sites to enhance their tourism offerings, driving increased visitor engagement and revenue. Tobago, blessed with rich and diverse cultural heritage, must seize the opportunity to diversify its tourism sector. And by recognizing the Assembly Legislature building as a protected site, we open the door to increasing educational tourism, cultural tourism, and community and heritage tourism. So, Assemblyman George spoke about guided tours, interactive experiences for visitors, and some of that work has already started. Cultural tourism, where we'll be attracting researchers, historians, and cultural enthusiasts to the island of Tobago to study our rich historical sites and attractions. And community and heritage tourism, which would seek to empower our local entrepreneurs, our artisans, tour guides to capitalize on enriched tourism products that highlights Tobago's unique past. Furthermore, protecting this site will generate economic activity through local businesses, hotels, restaurants, and transportation services, boosting employment and economic prosperity for Tobagonians. Madam Presiding Officer, the Tobago House of Assembly has a duty, both moral and institutional, to lead this charge. We have at our disposal the Antiquities Unit, and it was the dream of the Honorable Farley Chavez Augustine when he decided to put antiquities as a main focus of our mandate to ensure that we build the systems to be able to preserve the valued structures, sites, history that we have. Through the work of the division, we will be creating a framework for structured conservation efforts, not just for the assets under the division's management, but assets throughout the island of Tobago. And some of the work that we have already started with the National Heritage Trust include them handing over a heritage asset registry to us of over 100 sites on the island that need to have a targeted approach where preservation is concerned. However, we must go beyond mere administrative efforts. The Assembly must, one, advance the process of formal designation through the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that the purpose of this motion is achieved, that the Assembly Legislature building is granted National Heritage Site status. Two, secure the legal protections that prevent unauthorized modifications or potential demolitions of historically significant sites in Tobago. Three, invest in restoration and conservation efforts, ensuring that the structure remains intact for future generations. And four, develop a public awareness campaign that educates the citizens, particularly young people, on the importance of preserving Tobago's legislative and cultural heritage. So this is not an issue that we can defer to another day. The time is now, as Assemblyman George said. Every moment we delay, we risk erosion of our history, the diminishing of our cultural identity, and the loss of an opportunity to create lasting economic benefits. Madam Presiding Officer, history is not merely for scholars, and I know that you personally have a love for history. But it's not merely for scholars, museums, or government institutions. It belongs to the people. And this motion is not just about legislative recognition, but about fostering a collective appreciation for Tobago's past. And that is why we want to put this on public record, that this is something that this administration is pursuing and will achieve. We have to tell our stories. We have to lead our communities in preserving those stories and preserving those knowledge bearers who hold those stories in their heads. And Dr. Collier was one such knowledge bearer. And when our knowledge bearers die, museums die with them. And we want to ensure that this living museum of history, this actual tangible piece of our historical heritage is preserved for years to come. So we must encourage our storytellers to capture lived experiences and the oral history surrounding this institution and many others in communities. We have to go in our schools, and I know that the secretary in charge of the Division of Education, Research and Technology, as part of her trust to build out that Tobago-centric curriculum. At the core of that will be educating our young people on Tobago's history, and we will have those partnerships with the division to ensure that the correct history is taught, that they will understand the evolution of governance on the island and how the Assembly Legislature has played its role over the years. And certainly something that we cannot leave out is our public-private partnerships and collaborations. And these can assist in funding and maintaining heritage sites. So despite the fact that we don't ever get what we ask for, and we have so many things to do with the little that we have gotten, our public-private collaborations can help us in some areas, in some instances, where we can access funding to maintain and restore heritage sites, ensuring sustainability and broader community participation and collaboration. And currently, there already exist tax incentives for companies that invest in restoration and renovation projects of sites of historical significance. And these are ways that businesses can tangibly give back to communities and then demonstrate corporate social responsibility. I must take this opportunity to send kudos to Madam Presiding Officer. You have breathed new life into the Assembly Legislature, which is now called the People's House. And we are privileged as part of this administration to have attended many activities that you have done here to engage young people, to engage persons outside of Tobago through your interactive tours, the different debates that you have, the different activities that you have done. And I must place on record my congratulations to you for a very successful International Women's Day debate, and I hope that you continue the good work that you're doing in spearheading the work of the People's House. Madam Presiding Officer, we must make history come alive, and I know that this is what excites you. Not just as something to be studied, but as something to be experienced and felt and passed down through generations. This motion before us calls for the recognition and preservation of the Assembly Legislature building of Tobago as a national heritage site. And this designation is not just a symbolic gesture, but a necessary action to safeguard the rich cultural, political, and historical significance of this landmark. Protecting this site ensures that future generations can appreciate and learn from its legacy. The Assembly Legislature of Tobago has been a cornerstone of the island's governance for over 2 centuries. It has played an instrumental role in the democratic evolution of Tobago, of the people of Tobago, and has provided a foundation for legislative development and governance that has shaped the island's trajectory. And throughout its history, the Assembly Legislature has witnessed and facilitated key legislative advancements. These decisions have influenced governance structures, policies, and administrative frameworks, making the building an integral part of Tobago's political landscape. More than just a legislative institution, the Assembly Legislature embodies the island's fight for autonomy, and we could never stop beating that drum. Everything we do here has to redound to the island's autonomy. It is a symbol of resilience. 2 centuries is a very long time to be in existence, reflecting the enduring efforts of Tobagonians to establish and maintain self-governance within the broader framework of Trinidad and Tobago's political structure. The historical significance of the building is matched by its architectural and cultural value. Designed with a blend of colonial-era influences and local craftsmanship, the Assembly Legislature stands as a testament to the island's architectural evolution. So preserving the building allows future generations to appreciate traditional construction techniques and understand how architectural styles have reflected the changing political and cultural dynamics of Tobago. So sites like the Assembly Legislature building serve as very real and very tangible links to our past. They foster a sense of identity and belonging, strengthening that old Tobago patriotism, that Tobago pride, that Tobago everything that makes us who we are, and reinforces the historical contributions of our ancestors who have gone before us. Recognizing this site as a national heritage site further enhances its role in national consciousness. What is the purpose of this building? Our people need to know and understand and embrace it. It solidifies its place in historical records and ensures that it remains a very important part of Tobago's collective memory. Acknowledging the Assembly Legislature's historical significance contributes to the broader narrative of Tobago's self-determination. The island's struggle for increased political autonomy is deeply connected to the work conducted within the walls of this institution. And we have the pictures on the wall of all the past chief secretaries and chairmen of the Tobago House of Assembly. And we are just part of continuing running that race to Tobago self-determination. The National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago is the primary body responsible for identifying and protecting sites of historical importance. And its mandate aligns perfectly with the objectives of this motion and the mandate of this administration, making it the most suitable institution to oversee this designation. By granting the Assembly Legislature national heritage status, the building receives the necessary legal protections. And these protections prevent unauthorized modifications, deterioration, or neglect that could compromise its historical integrity. Inclusion in their National Trust Registry also amplifies national awareness and institutional support. In other words, it catapults the Assembly Legislature into the consciousness of the people of Trinidad, because now they themselves will get the opportunity to learn about how important the legislature is to the people of Tobago and to the island of Tobago. This building's significance will be formally recognized, encouraging greater governmental and community involvement in its preservation. The TRHA must take an active role in documenting and conserving the Assembly Legislature building. The Department of Antiquities will spearhead efforts to ensure its protection, maintenance, and public engagement. Proper conservation will maintain the building's structural integrity while allowing for adaptive reuse that respects its historical authenticity. And adaptive reuse ensures that the site remains functional and relevant. So Assemblyman George spoke about the upgrades that we intend to do to the building. We don't want to lose the historical importance of the structure, but certainly it has to be adapted for modern use. And we intend to preserve its original character. Investment in restoration and maintenance efforts is crucial and critical. Allocating resources to protect the Assembly Legislature will demonstrate a commitment to Tobago's cultural and historical legacy, ensuring its survival for future generations. And as we cut and contrive, as we decide what we can do and what we can't do, we will put the Assembly Legislature at the forefront of the things that we must do. One of the things that we have to do, we have no choice. Other things can wait, but this building cannot wait for us to do what we have to do. Public education campaigns will be launched to highlight the significance of this site, and we will do that work in conjunction with the beautiful staff at the Assembly Legislature. And these awareness initiatives will help all of us understand why the Assembly Legislature building is worth preserving and how persons can contribute to these conservation efforts. So by engaging schools, historians, cultural organizations, we will further enhance the impact of these preservation efforts. And these groups themselves can play a vital role in promoting the building's historical and political legacy through research, storytelling, and public discourse. The public-private partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, we can seek those to help us in continuing the restoration and the preservation of this building. So that means collaboration with local businesses. Tobago people must get involved. We must get our local businesses involved. International organizations that focus on historical sites and the preservation of such, and heritage groups can provide financial and technical support for restoration initiatives. So this designation that we are asking for in this motion is a critical step in ensuring that Tobago's rich political and cultural history is safeguarded. It is an opportunity to formally recognize the contributions of those who have shaped Tobago's governance and democratic journey. So that's why we are in this house. This assembly must stand united in its commitment to protecting and preserving this landmark. And what we say here today will go on public record and it will go on Hansard. And I hope that the minority understands that they have to stand on the right side of history where this is concerned. Doing so will ensure that future generations continue to benefit from its legacy, and that Tobago's historical and cultural heritage remains a source of pride and inspiration. As I said in the beginning, the Assembly Legislature building is more than just a structure. It's more than just a building. It's a living testament to Tobago's resilience, governance, and political evolution. Preserving it reinforces our dedication to historical awareness, democratic principles, and national identity. So in conclusion, achieving what we set out to do with this motion is very necessary and very justifying. The Assembly, this chamber, those among us, membership, we must act decisively to support this motion, recognizing the long-term benefits of heritage preservation for Tobago's people, economy, and historical continuity. Madam Presiding Officer, I urge my colleagues in this chamber today to reflect deeply on the weight of what we are here for. And if we fail to act, if we fail to send a clear message if we fail to act, that our history is disposable, that our past is negotiable, and that our future generations are not entitled to the same rich legacy that was gifted to us by those who came before. But if we choose action, if we commit to protecting and celebrating this historical landmark, we ignite a new movement, one that places Tobago's history at the forefront of our development strategy. This is a defining moment. We have the opportunity to set a precedent, to lay the foundation for a Tobago that respects its past while boldly charting a course for its new future. Let us not be remembered as a generation that allowed our history to be forgotten. Instead, let us be stewards, the best stewards we can be, the best ambassadors we can be of this greatest little island of the planet, where we will ensure that the sacrifices, struggles, and triumphs of our ancestors are enshrined in the consciousness of our people for all time. Madam Presiding Officer, the past is not simply behind us, it is within us, shaping our present, and guiding our future. Let us honor it as we stand here and honor this motion, honor what we intend to do with this motion, honor the building that we're standing in. Let us protect it. Let us stand united in declaring that Tobago's history is worth preserving. I stand in unwavering support of this motion, and I call on all members of this assembly to do the same. I thank you.
Assemblyman Sampson, you may now join this debate.
I must say a pleasant good afternoon to this honorable house, to all my colleagues, to all the persons in the gallery, good afternoon. I must also say love and thanks to the residents of the wonderful electoral district of Bonaccord Crown Point, on whose backs I stand here this afternoon. Well, you know, it is better...
Members. Assemblyman Sampson, please continue.
Right, Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to utilize 42.7. As for the minority, it is better I go to the parliament and read a speech than be shut up by a Rottweiler and say, hush your mouth, and say nothing.
Your leave has been granted. Leave is granted. Continue.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. I am filled with a special kind of gratitude and optimistic hope as I make my contribution today. I believe we should all be in agreement on this motion. As such, Madam Presiding Officer, I rise today in full support of this motion, which calls for the designation of the Assembly Legislature of Tobago as a National Heritage Site. This is not just a call for recognition, but for the preservation of Tobago's very identity, etched in the stones and chambers of this historic institution. A chamber in which several motions have been debated. Motions to give us more administrative freedom on matters of national security, our yearly budgetary allocation, justification, and most famously, the historic TRHA elections of January 2021, to name a few. Many much older than me can go much deeper into this legislature's history. As a former deputy presiding officer, I am intimately familiar with the workings of this legislature. I have seen firsthand how it serves as the cornerstone of governance, a symbol of Tobago's self-determination, and a reflection of our people's resilience. But beyond governance, this building is a repository of our collective history, one that predates even the establishment of modern self-governance in this country. So when I stand here, I stand with full authority on this motion. This Assembly legislature has endured defining moments in our island's history. It has been the stage upon which the aspirations of generations of Tobagonians have been articulated, debated, and ultimately enshrined in law. In this very space, Tobagonians have fought to protect their unique cultural identity, advocate for their rights, and lay the groundwork for autonomy. Madam Presiding Officer, even if we wanted to, we can't get away from this autonomy quest. It is a fight not for myself or my colleagues, but for the people of Tobago. A fight that they have entrusted to us in this Assembly to conduct on their behalf. Not a partial right, but a full right to determine our destiny. This motion, yet again, is really one about autonomy because we are here debating the right to something obvious, at least to all Tobagonians. Well, let me take that back. It may not be to my colleagues in the minority because we all know they believe we are not worthy of full autonomy. Yes. Madam Presiding Officer, to understand the people of Tobago, one must understand this institution's role in shaping our society. Its walls have echoed the voices of pioneers, statesmen, and community leaders who have fought for greater recognition, better opportunities, and fairer representation. To disregard its historical significance would be to disregard Tobago's journey itself. Madam Presiding Officer, no doubt our ongoing cries for self-determination have stained the walls of this famous legislature. Names like Mr. A.N.R. Robinson, Winston Murray, Ho Choi Charles, and so much more come to mind. Beyond the political and administrative significance, we must also recognize the potential of heritage designation to contribute to community development. Heritage sites are not just relics of the past. They are powerful tools for education, cultural appreciation, and economic stimulation. A formal designation by the National Trust will allow for structured conservation efforts, ensuring that future generations can appreciate and learn from this institution. It would open new avenues for tourism, create opportunities for cultural storytelling, and reinforce a sense of pride in our history. Furthermore, this motion aligns seamlessly with the work of my division. Community development is deeply rooted in cultural preservation, and our communities thrive when they are connected to their history. We will work alongside the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation to ensure that the designation and protection of this site is upheld because of its historic, cultural, and political significance. By supporting this motion, we are ensuring that our youth and future leaders understand the legacy they are inheriting, a legacy that must be protected and celebrated. Madam Presiding Officer, what better way to celebrate this legislature's 200th anniversary than by handing it over to its rightful owners under the proper designation? The people of this esteemed island, my people, deserve this and so much more. This Tobago House of Assembly Legislature is the oldest political institution in the country, older than the current parliament. Can we have a moment to celebrate this? Are we allowed to say how we wish to mark this significant milestone? No. I guess it's another thing we should ask permission for. Beyond this, Madam Presiding Officer, the tourism initiatives that can ensure economic benefits can only be materialized upon the National Trust doing the right thing by the people of Tobago. Let me put it in plainly. We want our things, we must have our things. To honor our past and to ensure that the story of Tobago's governance, resilience, and identity remains enshrined for generations to come. Let me lay it resolutely as I close, just in case it was unclear. This Assembly calls on the National Trust to recognize the Tobago House of Assembly Legislature as a pertinent site in Tobago's history and move towards its designation as a National Protected Heritage Site. I thank you.
Assemblyman Calvin Morris, you may now join this debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Let me also join with the rest of my colleagues in recognizing and extending condolences to the family of Dr. Cyril Collier. Madam Presiding Officer, as I join this debate, I want to make it abundantly clear, pellucidly so, Madam Presiding Officer, that this minority has absolutely no challenge with this very historical site and the legislative center and democratic center of Tobago's legislative authority being recognized and designated within the National Heritage Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. That is clear. We have absolutely no challenge with that. What we are saying and advising our colleagues and reminding them is that whether we pass a resolution here or not, the ultimate responsibility lies with the executive to do its work. And what is its work? If you want to get the designation as prescribed, there's a process properly outlined in law, and therefore you ought to follow the process. The question is today, after 3 years and 4 months in government, have you taken any initiative to commence that process that would allow the Tobago Assembly Legislature to be so designated and identified? And perhaps when my colleague is wrapping up, he might be able to enlighten us whether his division, which is now responsible for sites like this under the Department of Antiquities, if they have taken any such steps. Because the irony of this, I heard a member saying that they brought it to the House because they are seeking inclusion and they want to include all the members of the House. But, Madam Presiding Officer, I can remember just recently, historically, we debated the most important motion in this House. And that motion is a motion that was brought by the minority, supported by the majority, which paved and outlined a process as to how we would approach discussions on ensuring that Tobago's autonomy is passed in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. We had minor adjustments from the majority, and it was passed unanimously in this House. The one person who did not see it as important to be here and found himself in Brazil, the Chief Secretary, completely ignored that process and, in fact, went and do his own thing. And it is ironic that we are talking about autonomy and how this reflects autonomy. But in that instance, the Chief Secretary disregarded disrespected this very house and then gave an instruction that did not involve any member of this house. So where was the inclusion in that decision to tell, Madam Presiding Officer, to tell the rest of the country and the island not to support autonomy? And today I want to place it on the record that while in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, the People's National Movement, 22 members supported the autonomy bill for Tobago, it was the advice of this Chief Secretary who gave the UNC the authority to deny autonomy. So,
Minority Leader, members, please continue.
I'm putting it in the context that it was said that the PNM does not want autonomy for Tobago, and it is them who want autonomy for Tobago. And I'm just simply letting the record state here categorically, as it is properly reported and was viewed, that the PNM supported autonomy in the Parliament of Tobago, but we did not have the requisite numbers because it required a special majority of over 31 members, and the PNM only had 22.
Kindly move on. Thank you.
Madam Presiding Officer, while we are speaking autonomy, and you see, action speaks louder than words. And as I said, it has been 3 years and over, we are approaching 4 months. Nothing was done by this administration to advance this issue of the Assembly Legislature being recognized and designated. And all it requires as spelled out by my colleague, Councillor Benoit, is that you must make an application. That application, as far as we know on this side, has not been done. Madam Presiding Officer, and this is why I do the comparison, because this is not the first site in Tobago that has been properly designated. And you see, when you have people that don't know how to do their work, you end up with with motions like this that really should be about people taking action. And this is why I said action speaks louder than words. And Madam Presiding Officer, do you know that Fort King George is properly designated a historical site under the National Trust? That was done by a PNM administration. Madam Presiding Officer, do you know as well, I think it's the rainforest is properly designated as a historical site under the National Trust, again, done by a PNM. So, Madam Presiding Officer, they had 3 years and 4 months, and they did absolutely nothing. So this doesn't require, and it did not take the intervention of the Assembly Legislature for that to be done. All it took was proper governance, people who knew what to do, and get it done. And this is what is lacking all across the Tobago House of Assembly at this time. What we get is excuse, blame, excuse, and I keep telling my colleagues there's a difference between fighting and fighting up. Because here today we are wasting time fighting up to do something that just requires you doing your work. Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, and if they are really genuinely serious about autonomy for Tobago and even for the legislature, recognizing the limitations, we should really have a discussion about the independence of this legislature. Because, Madam Presiding Officer, you would know, you have the challenge. This legislature don't even have the ability to take up its own lawyer. You have to seek advice from the Chief Administrator. Where is the proper structure? So imagine we are fighting up behind a building. Yes, the building is important, but what about the administrative structure, the organizational structure for you to employ people? You have to use a short-term arrangement, because while they would have ensured in every executive secretarial office, they empowered and enlarged their organizations, the very Assembly Legislature is limited and stifled. You need staff. And why has that, just as how we are putting the energy into the building, why aren't we putting the same energy and vigor into ensuring that we have the administrative structure, the independence and the autonomy so that the legislature can truly function and attain its objectives? Madam Presiding Officer, I would have appreciated today, and I hope perhaps we can look at amending this motion that goes deeper, because while, as I said, it is important for us to do the kind of preservation, renovation of the building and expansion, similarly, we need to treat with the organizational structure and even take, for instance, the clerk. When you do the comparator between the parliament and how it operates and the legislature and how it operates to the executive, our clerk really is just basically a figurehead, whereas the clerk in the parliament has administrative authority. That clerk can make decisions on behalf of the parliament. Our clerk is very limited in their responsibility, because most of the actual work is the responsibility of the chief administrator. And what you have is a situation where you have himself unto himself, because the chief administrator is really a representative of the executive, and the legislature, which ought to be independent of the executive, end up being under the very executive to which it should be overseeing. And therefore, if we want to have a serious conversation in this house about autonomy, if you're really serious about autonomy, let us fix what we can fix. Because we can fix the challenges that is facing this assembly legislature when it comes to its independence. Let us have a conversation about that. And as minority leader, I will be happy for us to debate, conversate, and agree as to how we will ensure that we strengthen the independence and the autonomy and the integrity of this assembly, not just in building, but in its overall structure. So again, before I wrap up, I just want to make it abundantly clear. We are not against the assembly legislature being designated as a heritage site under the National Trust. In fact, the law is very clear. I heard some concerns about the building, ensuring that nobody could just destroy the building, and we are saying if they go through the process, the Act, I think is 27 of the Act, clearly states that no one can just arbitrarily destroy the building. So my advice, I join Councillor Benoit in encouraging the Division of Tourism to do its work, go through the process, and if you require the support of the minority, the support is clearly documented and registered here today. We have absolutely no challenge, but you can't be convenient in your inclusion, because when you have a situation where we sat here, spent hours debating and agreeing, and then that resolution was ignored to the point that it took and cost Tobago its autonomy, I have a serious challenge with that. And Madam Presiding Officer, with those few words, I thank you.
Assemblyman George, you may now wrap up this debate.
Good afternoon again, Madam Presiding Officer, colleagues. I sat in my seat and I listened to what I would consider a lot of rambling from the minority. Before I close, I would like to deal with a few things. First of all, the issue of autonomy. it seems to me that the minority only remembers up to a certain point in time. Because before the last autonomy vote, I'm absolutely positive that all the PNM MPs sat in the House and voted against it.
Yes. Madam President, point of clarification, there was no, after 1996, there's no record of a vote in Parliament except that which just recently happened. And I challenge the member to provide us the date, time, and place where that vote happened.
Again, I will correct myself, there was no vote, but there was no one to vote. Because they walked out of the House. So the process wasn't even important for them, enough for them to deliberate on it.
Continue, member.
You talk about inclusion. I would remember these same autonomy bills were debated by your council leader at the point in time, Mr. Orville London, well-renowned politicians past, Mr. Hotray Charles, and the versions that were sent down to Trinidad were not the versions that were voted on. So what was the purpose of all those weeks of consultation that you're talking about? You seem to see through one lens, and that is not good enough. You understand? The other thing, you're talking about the historical sites that are the sites that are recorded as historical sites. These sites that you all have had left abandoned. Same Fort King George that was left to rot. We recently started the process of restoring them. I'm just responding to the things that you said, sir, and you are challenging me on one side, and I'm saying to you, you're talking about action. What is it that you're saying that I can do something if you're not going to give it to me? We're talking about, yes, when you corrected me in terms of me saying that we can't borrow. Yes, we can apply to the Minister of Finance to borrow, but we have not been receiving. The only time approval has been granted was the one time to get into the bond financing on an election campaign trail.
Yes, $165 million. $165 million.
So although there is provision for, it has never been granted other than one time for an election campaign, so that's the same thing as no. We ain't wasting with time to go down the road for the central government to show off on us. It has happened time and time again.
2 Saturdays ago.
You also stressed on the need on expanding the building, and the presiding officer needs more staff. We moved the technical area there so that we could expand this area for members. And that's why I noted in my presentation that we asked for additional funding to deal with the building, which was not granted. Are you saying to us again to squeeze something from one of the divisions that would then result in us being unable to do the work that we have to do out there, which would then result with you and your colleagues slugging us along, saying that we are not doing what we are supposed to do? At the end of the day, the pie is the pie. Whether we have to cut it into 10, 15, 20, 30, the pie is the pie. We have been doing what is necessary. We have been cutting, we have been contriving, and we have been doing the best that we could with what has been afforded to us. Honorable Presiding Officer, esteemed colleagues, and the resilient people of Tobago, we have heard today a chorus of voices, each speaking with conviction, passion, and unyielding commitment to the preservation of our heritage and our autonomy. This motion before us is not merely about protecting bricks and mortar. It is about safeguarding the soul of Tobago, the very heart of our democratic evolution. The Assembly Legislature building stands not just as a testament to our past, but as a bold declaration to our right to self-determination. It is a symbol of our struggle, our perseverance, and our relentless pursuit of autonomy. By supporting this motion, we are not just preserving a historic site, we are preserving our identity, our pride, and our power as Tobagonians. Today, we send a clear message to every Tobagonian, both at home and abroad. We will not be erased from history. We will not let our legacy be cast aside or our stories be silenced. We will protect this building because it is more than just a place. It is a spiritual manifestation, a symbol of our indomitable will to shape our destiny. Let us honor the memory of those who fought for our rights and the aspirations of those who continue to fight today. Let us rise together, unwavering and unafraid, and declare that Tobagonians' legacy will not be buried under bureaucracy or abandoned to decay. We will champion our heritage because it is ours to protect, ours to cherish, ours to pass on. Today, we take a stand, not just for a building, but for a soul of Tobago. Let history remember that on this day, we fought to preserve the essence of who we are. I urge every member of this House to vote in favor of this motion, not just for ourselves, but for future generations that will look to this building and see the unbreakable spirit of Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, I so move.
Honorable members, the question put is, whereas the Assembly Legislature has been the foundation of democratic governance and legislative development for over 200 years, embodying the island's rich political and cultural heritage. And whereas the Assembly Legislature stands as a symbol of Tobago's democratic evolution, autonomy, and resilience, and has a historical significance in shaping the island's legal and administrative framework. And whereas the preservation and recognition of historically significant sites contribute to national identity, cultural education, and tourism development. And whereas the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago is mandated to identify and protect sites of historical and cultural importance for future generations, be it resolved that this Assembly formally calls on the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago to designate the Assembly Legislature Building of Tobago as a National Heritage Site in recognition of its historical, architectural, and cultural significance. And be it further resolved that the Tobago House of Assembly initiates the process of documenting, conserving, and promoting the Assembly Legislature Building as a protected heritage site under the Department of Antiquities of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation. And be it further resolved that this Assembly commits to supporting the preservation efforts, public awareness campaigns, and sustainable tourism initiatives centered on the Assembly Legislature's historical legacy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any against, say no. The ayes have it. Motion carried.
Motion for adjournment.
Leader of Assembly Business.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that this House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question put is that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against say no. The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. Honorable members, have a good evening.
Same to you.